Indriya aramam, interested only in sense gratification or sensuality. Utsrija, giving up. Svaminam, to her present husband or to the former maintainer. Dukkhita, being very much aggrieved. Yayau, she left. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Aggrieved by her husband's behavior with another, the she-goat thought that the he-goat was not actually her friend, but was hard-hearted and was her friend only for the time being. Therefore, because her husband was lusty, she left him and returned to her former maintainer. Purport. The word Swaminam is significant. Swami means caretaker or master. Devayani was cared for by Shukracharya before her marriage, and after her marriage he was cared for by Yayati. But here the word Swaminam indicates that Devayani left the protection of her husband, Yayati, and returned to her former protector, Shukracharya. Vedic civilization recommends that a woman stay under the protection of a man. During childhood, she should be cared for by her father, in youth by her husband, and in old age by a grown son. In any stage of life, a woman should not have independence. Om Agyan Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaham. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatireshtani Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Tam Dukhridam Suhrid Rupam Kaminam Kshana Sauhridam Indiyaram Mam Utsrija Swaminam Dukkhitayayau. Aggrieved by her husband's behavior with another, the she-goat thought that he-goat was not actually her friend, but was hard-hearted and was her friend only for the time being. Therefore, because her husband was lusty, she left him and returned to her former maintainer. Here we may wonder why Maharaj Yayati is using this allegorical presentation of his life, speaking to Devayani. Why not being straightforward? Why using allegory, some kind of comparison through which the same experience that have been undertaken somewhat earlier had occurred. We know in the story of King Parchina Barhishit, when Narada Muni came, he presented similar story of life of the Parchina Barhishat, but in again allegorical form. And what was that story? It was story of King Puranjana in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, amazing pastime, where Narada Muni pointed out that, my dear King Parchina Barhishat, you're just like that. I mean, he didn't say straightforwardly, that's the point. He said, just like King Parchina Barhishat, he was performing all these different yagyas, karmakandic sacrifices, and the whole story unraveled what had occurred as a consequence to such kind of activities. where King Parchanabarhishat was, or in this case King Puranjana, as the allegorical story goes, was so much intent upon performing various sacrifices that he was practically becoming sinful and very violent, almost like what we hear had happened just prior to advent of Lord Buddha. Karma Mimamsa philosophy, using Vedic sacrifices for apparently pious credits, but essentially leading to very sinful activities, which overweight the position of somebody who is really performing certain type of ritual or spiritual process for spiritual benefit. So there is the point of certain type of balance that has to be there, and consciousness with which certain activity has to be performed. So Narada Muni is presenting this allegorical story because if he would directly speak to King Parchanabarhishat, the king might not feel so well. He might feel offended. He might not be able to directly accept that this is really the case and this is something that he is doing in his life. But when the story is told in such a manner that it indirectly points out to somebody else, then one can but not help to try to see, oh, maybe, something is similarly happening in my life as well, and maybe I should take some precautions, or maybe I can, I could relate to that. So here in same way or similar way, Maharaj Jayati is telling the tale, retelling the story, telling the story about he-goat and the she-goat. And again, it's an allegorical story, and again, it's more attractive. It's not like when you speak directly, straightforwardly in such kind of, or many kind of cases, that it has much deeper effect. And he is expressing that to Devayani, saying how he has been engaged in so many sensual activities, and retelling the whole pastime, how he met Devayani and how they got married together, lived together, enjoyed together, but that didn't lead to any satisfaction. And ultimately, due to this allegorical story, Devayani also became inspired to undertake more serious spiritual practice. We see at the end of this chapter, both of them achieve liberation. They achieve liberation. They're done. They're done with those type of sensual lifestyle, sense-centered lifestyle, and they're fully absorbed in the spiritual practice. So this kind of story, therefore, it helps. It doesn't hurt so much the ego that I might be the one involved in such kind of activities directly, but it's kind of a smoothing the blow, of the reality that one has to face or realize. It's like some kind of, they have this like you have in the car, how you call that in the car, that shock, that there's another word, shock absorbers, suspension, not really suspension, but there's another word, what? Air, no, well, I know something else I'm looking for, but it's the same thing. Anyway, so it's kind of a, okay, you can say shock absorber, something that, kind of gradually, slowly, it leads to the, something that one has to face in this case. Or like in these shock absorbers, gradually leads you to something that you don't feel such a tremor, such a force immediately. And it also very nicely illustrates the whole circumstance, because goats are also pretty much sensuous animals, and the comparison it's very appropriate. If you look back, why all this had happened, then it would be more easier to understand the present position of Maharaj Yayati. In Mahabharata there is a description of how Maharaj Yayati and Devayani met also. Devayani was, as we hear, daughter of Shukracharya, and when she was still a young girl, at that time the demigods were very much frightened by the powerful position of the demons. And why demons have been powerful? Of course, definitely because they have been worshipping Shukracharya as their guru very staunchly, with a lot of faith, with a lot of reverence. And what did also Shukracharya possessed? He possessed knowledge of Sanjivani, the mantra, the science of how to revive somebody who is dead, how to revive him back into the body. He would, after the war of demons and demigods, he would just dip the demons in certain type of pool and they would come up alive. And the demigods were terrified. And although Brihaspati is equally, if not more, exalted by his prowess and knowledge, but still Shukracharya had possessed this certain type of knowledge. And we know, like in case of Dronacharya, he taught Drishtadyumna all the science of military weaponry, in spite of knowing that Drishtadyumna is going to be one who is going to kill him. Because if somebody is qualified, no matter what the consequences might be, the Brahmana wouldn't be reluctant, he wouldn't hesitate to impart that knowledge to that kind of qualified disciple. So then what the demigods thought, let us send Kacha, who was the son of Brihaspati, and let him study under Shukracharya. Let him be a brahmachari, let him undergo the brahmachari training for 1,000 years. For 1,000 years. And then as the boon, after completing that training, let him ask for this science of Sanjivani. And that was arranged. Kacha came and was begging Shukracharya, please accept me as your disciple. And Shukracharya, of course, agreed, but demons were very suspicious from the beginning. They knew there is something going on here. Why would demigods send, one of their members to us, to the demons, to learn anything which they can learn themselves in the higher planetary systems? But of course, there is another system in the Vedic tradition that one again doesn't learn at home. One doesn't learn directly and for a longer period of time from his own father. He goes to some other sage. We see those examples in Mahabharata. Then one sage would send his son to some other sage, and that sage would send his son to that other sage. They wouldn't study at home because familiarity, because of attachment. The main principle of spiritual life, spiritual practice, is to develop sense of detachment. And of course many other qualities that are required, which would have been more difficult if one remains in the atmosphere of the home. So in that sense was also very appropriate. So Kacha came and he was studying under Shukracharya, serving very nicely. But what happened in the meantime, Devayani was also there. She was present. And she developed a loving affection towards Kacha. Kacha was very handsome, Kacha was very qualified. And Devayani became very attracted to him. But Kacha treated her just as one would treat his own sister. This was Kacha's disposition. And he would treat her very protectively. He would treat her again with a lot of respect. He would give her different gifts whenever he would go somewhere. He would give flowers. But Devayani was understanding this as a sign of equal affection. Many times this misunderstanding happens. Try to do something and then somebody immediately, it's like, anyway, I won't get into this. But sometimes things may become misunderstood like this. And she started becoming more fond towards Kacha, more and more. And then finally, after 500 years, the demigods have got a proof. They figured out now that Kacha really, he's the one who came to receive this science. He's going to ask for this knowledge of Sanjivani, and we should do something about it. And then as we know, before Kacha was outside, I think tending cows or something, before he came back to the ashram, what they did, they killed him. They cut him into pieces and fed him to jackals. And then Devayani, upon Kacha not returning back, she was becoming mortified that what is this? How is it possible? And Shukracharya understood everything, but she was imploring that, please bring Kacha back, please bring Kacha back. She said, I can't live without him. She was already very, very attached. And then Kacha was invoked back by that science of Sanjivani. Shukracharya used that knowledge of Sanjivani, invoked him back and restored him his body back. So Kacha was again in the ashram. And all those vultures, these jackals, they've been ripped off. All the parts of the Kacha came out, assembled back together. So then again some time passed, and now everyone was a little bit more on alert. But still again, demons managed again to catch Kacha. And this time they grinded him into paste and they threw it in the ocean. But again, Devayani was, very, very disturbed. And she was imploring back to Shukracharya, please restore him back, bring him back to life because of that affection. And then sure enough, this is what Shukracharya did. Kacha was back into the ashram. And then for the third time, the demons did it again. But this time, what they conspired and what they did, they burned Kacha's body into the ashes. And they mixed those ashes into the wine of Shukracharya, which he drank and which went into his stomach. So now what to do? So Shukracharya, by his dint of his prowess, he could understand what had happened. And he said to Devayani that it's impossible now. How is it possible now to revive him? If I revive him, I'm dead. If he comes out of my stomach. And these demons, they're so, he actually cursed. He said that from this time on, any Brahmana who drinks alcohol or wine or something like that he would fall from his position. Yeah. But aside of that. So, then what the solution would have been, then it was suggested by Devayani that you revive Kacha, and now when he's still in your stomach, you teach him that science of Sanjiva, you teach him that mantra. So when you revive him and you leave your body, then he will use the same mantra to revive you. And this is what has been done. So Shukracharya agreed, he taught that mantra, and Kacha, who was within the stomach, still the soul is there, soul is conscious. He received that mantra and he was revived, and then after Shukracharya died, then he revived him. But what is the point of all this pastime that has been happening is that Devayani was very, very attracted to Kacha. And then when finally this brahmachari period time was over after 1,000 years, even though Kacha received that science of Sanjivani, then Devayani approached him before Kacha was about to depart to the heavenly planets. She approached him and she requested Kacha to marry her because she was so attracted to him. But Kacha denied. He said, how is it possible? I've treated you whole my, whatever this period time I've been staying here, I treated you as a sister. I cannot now, have any kind of different feeling towards you, but as towards the sister. I cannot marry you. It is absolutely inappropriate. And then, moreover, all of that period that I have spent as a brahmachari here, would have been a farce, because then I wouldn't have, if I would have think of you in any different way, then I wouldn't have been a brahmachari, and therefore all this, training and all this sacrifice and all this austerity that I have performed would have been absolutely worthless. because I wouldn't have been as a brahmachari. Then I would have been practicing this, completely kind of contemplating, marriage with you or whatever, So then that wouldn't have been brahmachari, process, brahmachari training. So it would be absolutely inappropriate from my side to accept you as my wife. And of course, Devayani couldn't accept this. She was very, very upset, and she couldn't have accepted this. And then what she did, in a fit of rage, she cursed him. She said, "You received the science of reviving others. You received this mantra, you received this knowledge, but I curse you that you won't be able to use it." But then Kacha replied, he said, "Yes, you've cursed me, fine, but I will teach this mantra to someone else. I might not use it, but I may still teach it, because you've cursed me for no reason. The reason for which you cursed me is invalid reason, and therefore that curse essentially won't have such an effect. So fine, I can accept to the degree that I won't teach that mantra I won't revive others, but I can teach this mantra to others." And this is what he did. When he returned to heavenly planets, he taught that mantra, and they were using the science of revival, the science of that Sanjivani. But then Kacha replied, and then he said that since you have cursed me for no reason, therefore you have fallen from the Brahminical standard, not understanding that, what it means, like when he was undergoing this brahmachari training, and because of that lusty affection towards him, you have fallen from the rishi's position. Therefore you're not fit to be a rishi, and therefore you're not fit also to marry any other rishi or any other brahmana. So he cursed her as such, and therefore he said, "You are going to marry somebody else. You're not going to be fit. You're not going to marry a brahmana." That was the curse. So although Devayani was from a Brahminical family, this is why she couldn't marry anyone from the same stature. She couldn't marry. So that's something that Devayani was, from that point on, therefore very much aware. She couldn't marry anybody. And then we come to this story when she's in the forest enjoying with her girlfriends, Sarmishta and other maidservants. And then, by the will of the providence, demigods are passing by, and the Vayu is also there, and the clothes are mixed by the wind, Vayu. And then once they come out to dress themselves, Sarmishta puts on the Devayani's clothes. And then upon seeing this, Devayani, also being a little bit affected by the arrogance and the pride, she chastises Sarmishta that, "How dare you? You're my disciple. You're inferior to me," since she was from Brahminical background and Sarmishta Kshatriya. "How dare you, wearing my clothes?" And Sarmishta replied, it wasn't on purpose. There was no fault of Sarmishta as such. But Devayani took it much farther than and as she should. And she started chastising and demeaning Sarmishta in many ways as such. Upon which Sarmishta also retaliated, replied that, "Actually, you are a beggar. I'm not your disciple, but you're the one who is begging. Your father goes to my father, Vishvaparva, who is the king of the demons, and your father glorifies my father who is on the throne, who is sitting on the throne, and is granting you so many desires, and is giving you so much in the charity, and is giving you everything, providing. You're the one who is inferior." And that was it. Devayani completely, broke into tears and became enraged as well. And they started quarreling. And of course, Sarmishta is from Kshatriya background, much stronger. And what happened, there was a well nearby, and Devayani ended up in the well, being pushed. And everybody else left except one of the maidservants who was there with Devayani. She couldn't pull her out. And then what it happens, here comes King Yayati on the hunting, sporting expedition, and being thirsty, and his horses as well, looking for some well, looking for some water. And sure enough, in such pursuit, he comes to the well, and whom he sees Devayani down crying in the well. And now Devayani, knowing that, there is a very exalted person here, and desiring to be pulled out of the well, saved out of the well, what she did, she offered her right hand. So she used that later on. When she offered the right hand, when you offer right hand to somebody else, that practically means, you should be very careful when of course you shouldn't touch, but it's like, but right hand. So then she was pulled out by Yayati from that well, by the right hand. That practically means giving hand in the marriage. And she knew, if nothing else, Yayati would be the best option, the best choice, because he's also kind of a rishi, he's a Raja rishi. He's a Kshatriya, so out of all the Kshatriyas, who would be the best choice? It would have been Yayati himself. So then she was pulled out, and anyway, then she went. She actually didn't want to come. She sent her servant to inform Shukracharya that she wouldn't be coming home because she has been so heavily offended. And actually, Shukracharya himself had been also offended by Sharmishta. And upon hearing this, Shukracharya, he also came to the forest, and he didn't want to return. And then Vishvaparva had to make so many arrangements, and then to pacify Shukracharya, and then he requested, what is it that we can do to bring you back as our preceptor? And then Devayani made all these different requests that Sarmishta become her maidservant also. Not friend anymore, but her maidservant. Why? Because she also transgressed her position, the etiquette, and before everything would have been settled as such, then that would be the only condition upon which Shukracharya would have returned. And then Vishvaparva didn't have a choice. Vishvaparva is none other than Jarasandha appearing later on as the king of the demons. Very powerful. So Vishvaparva agreed. He understood, without Shukracharya we have no hope. We'll be defeated by demigods, and then that's one thing. And then secondly, there's no question of becoming revived again, and without Shukracharya, that we will lose all the powers. And he understood everything. And then he spoke to Sarmishta. He ordered her practically, you have to become. There's no, for sake of all the demoniac race, practically, you have to agree. You have to become a maidservant. And then another request was by the Shukracharya, and that was later on again. They all went again to the same spot. Sarmishta, another maidservant with Devayani, and they were enjoying the forest, the gardens. And again Yayati came at that time, and this time Devayani requested Yayati directly to become her husband. So, but the request was, and of course then Shukracharya agreed, and then everything happened. But the request was that Sarmishta shouldn't have any children by Yayati. That was some kind of a punishment for the time being, not eternally, until it is understood that Sarmishta has understood the lesson and should respect Devayani and Brahminical class. And then later on maybe things would have been smoothened by the Shukracharya. But Yayati agreed in the first place, but later on in the gardens Devayani would find 3 different children, and they were looking like celestials. They were so wonderful. And then every time she would come across them, she would ask Sarmishta, whom do you have these children with? And Sarmishta would reply, with the Rishi. Again, what does that Rishi mean? She was thinking of Raja Rishi, which is Yayati. But Devayani thought, oh, Rishi, okay, maybe some other Rishi, something. But then finally, once those children were inquired by Devayani herself that who is your father, they pointed to Yayati, who was nearby. And Yayati was, of course, what to do now? He was like trying to be indifferent, but those children ran towards him, embracing him and everything. And this is where Devayani just broke. This is where everything was revealed. And of course, we know later on that 4 of them, they didn't accept that request of Yayati, except the Puru, because they were all to some degree contaminated. They didn't have the most exalted qualities. The only one who agreed was the Puru. And Puru was from this connection with the Sarmishta, which is appropriate, which is more appropriate, because Devayani being married to Yayati, who is considered of the lower class, lower level, that is the marriage of Pratilom, which is, it's like Anulom means when you comb your hair and it's going along it's like it's going very smoothly. But if you do it against, then it's not so smooth. So Pratilom means against. So that's why the quality of the children, it's not so good. So anyway, this is another reason where Devayani, like here we can hear, was very upset, and she left back to be protected by her father. She didn't want to remain living with King Yayati. She left back. And we know that in the Vedic times, the king would have many wives, but he would make sure that they all have separate arrangements, that there was no, which is almost practically impossible, but he would try his best, that there was no any rivalry between them, and that they would have all different separate facilities. Like Krishna, for each and every queen, he had palace, he had so many things, everything, and he himself expanded. But of course that was not possible, because in Sanskrit, very interesting, there is one word which has two meanings. It's the same word, which I forgot what it was. I'll try to recall it later on. But it's the same word, which denotes the co-wife, and it also points to the quarrel. So wherever there are co-wives, definitely they will feel some jealousy amongst each other. We know, like in the case of Chitraketu Maharaj, that other queens felt neglected, and therefore they conspired to kill the child which was born to Chitraketu Maharaj. So definitely there is always some kind of tension, there is some kind of rivalry happening. So Devayani couldn't tolerate this, that King Yayati was now showing affection towards Sarmishtra, which he shouldn't have been done. And this is why he has been cursed. He has been cursed to lose his potency, to lose his young age by Shukracharya. And everything just because the whole idea behind him not being connected to Sarmishta was that Sarmishta should have been corrected, rectified, understanding his position in relationship to Devayani. So that is what is the whole story background here. And then in the purport here, we see that Srila Prabhupada points out to that principle of a lady being always under the protection. And this is something that we know that Arjuna was very much stressing upon as one of the arguments for not to fight. Adharma bibhavat Krishna pradushanti kulastriya strishu dushta suvarshna jayate varna shankara. And this is it, varna shankara. We see it nowadays. The whole world is full of varna shankara. Yeah? What does it mean, varna shankara? Mixed. People don't know what they are. They, whether which gender they are even practically, and what to do. It's, what to speak of varna and ashram. It's such a mixture, such unclear position. What to do in life and how to perform any kind of activity. Complete mixture and complete disturbance to the society. So Arjuna knew if the women become unprotected, that they could be very easily misused by the unscrupulous man. And this is what is happening, we see nowadays. Of course, we are all pretty much in the same category. Striyo Vaishyas Tata Shudras. We are all pretty much nowadays, there's nothing like a man who can take responsibility, who is qualified. And no wonder we all seek some kind of independency that way. But at least we should try, in this process, we should try to become responsible from both sides. And practice the Vedic culture, because we see and understand how it yields to and it's the only way that leads towards the perfection of understanding the real self. So that desire for independence, of course, is also pretty much infused by the certain leaders of the society who want to exploit men and who want to exploit women also as the cheap working force. So this is why they would, and cheap, sense gratificatory, available options. And this is what they're definitely going to do in any way possible. So that one can be misled and then one can be exploited. But in the Vedic culture we see how everybody has its place and everyone was satisfied by such kind of protection. And therefore if husband wouldn't be available, then back to the father, like Devayani did in this case, or being, if the sons are grown up, like Kunti Maharani, she would be under protection of her sons. Because again, if this is not the case, then that would result in the chaos within the society. And we see that today. We just had somebody, we had Dr. Patel. We had Dr. Patel just last week talking to us about abortions and what is going on. He said daily 25,000 in India are performed legally. And he said almost equal number that it's not known about. Can you imagine what a number that is? Why is that? Because nobody wants to take responsibility. We are independent. Yes, and we are very sinful. We are very independent. We all want to be independent. And then we end up in trouble not considering what the consequences of so-called such kind of false independence are. Like I had some years back, I had one boy coming and he's asking my sister, she's pregnant, she somehow ended up, it was by accident. Now what to do? I said, now what to do? It's like asking me now what to do, And he was glorifying her sister, but what is there to glorify? She's, I have to take care of now. You should have taken care earlier, Now what to do now? I have no idea. He never came back. I gave him little sauce, but what to do? It's like, that's why I said abortion. Is that the solution? Or like Prabhupada would said, yes, independence, and it's kind of stage of pregnancy. Then who takes care? Somebody has to take care. Then what? The government takes care. Then it's a burden to government. It's a burden to someone. So better it be, in a range, appropriate way, rather than in such kind of a, so-called independent way, and then ending up in a sinful life. Because that is our disease. We want to become independent. But we don't really understand what that independence means. One of the most difficult things in spiritual life is to accept the spiritual master. To give up any kind of independence. It's easy to start chanting, it's easy to start coming to temple, it's easy this and that, but when you kind of finally have to give up independence, that's more difficult. I wrote once one letter to my Guru Maharaj, and I said, as kind of, about the initiation, and I was saying, it's difficult to surrender, like who is going to give up independence? I was still thinking I can, do this and that, and I got such a very, very enlightening reply that's such an illusion actually to think that we are independent. We are completely under the modes of the material nature. This is such a grand illusion to consider that we have anything to do with any kind of independence. We are completely dependent. Completely dependent. Our only choice is just choose whether we're going to be dependent on Krishna or on the modes of the material nature. That's in short anyway. We are complete. There's no question of independence. The things we eat, the things we wear, the lifestyle we live, everything is dictated to us by someone else. We think I'm choosing this. No, you're not. We are not independent at all. And we are governed by the urges and pushes under the modes of material nature. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha. Ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti nanyate. Muda, one who thinks he's dependent, he's a muda. He's a fool. There's no independence. And in modern society, so-called independence, free this and this kind of whatever, it's so exalted. And what is the most greatest expression of it? We want to go against the nature. We want to go to other planetary systems, like Ravana. He thought he's independent. I'll build a staircase against the nature. We want to go against the birth, old age, disease, and death. Yes, you can go as much as you want, but is it working? Is it possible? We are independent, but how you're independent? How we can't understand? There's no question of independence. It's impossible. So that's why there is a natural arrangement where being dependent, everyone is dependent. Everyone. There is no question of just like here Prabhupada says ladies are dependent. No, we are also, everybody is dependent. But just the question is whom we want to be dependent upon. That's the only choice we have. That's the only choice we have. So that's why at least we have to utilize our intelligence and agree that actually yes, we all need shelter, we all need guidance, we all need protection. Who are we in comparison to the power of material nature? Yeah. We are all dependent. And that's why in the beginning of the spiritual life, the Guru takes all the independence. He takes all the independence because we don't know what to do with it. Actually, we don't even have it. He will take everything and he will just say, you just follow the order and instructions. And then once he sees that we mature, that we know what to do with, in certain circumstances, what to do and how to react and how to behave, then he starts giving more and more independence. More and more. So first he takes and then he gives. But one has to qualify. This is what the whole point of spiritual process and life is, to qualify. So therefore when one qualifies, then like Yayati and Devayani, they achieve liberation. Achieve liberation. Through this story or through any other pastime, through any other, through the Vedic process, one achieves liberation. And then one achieves absolute independence by being dependent on Krishna. Being fully dependent on Krishna. This is what we are all looking for. So we will stop here. Our time is pretty much up because there is a program in the school, and just before that I will read the verse before, which doesn't have a purport. It said that when she-goat who had fallen into the well saw her beloved goat engaged in sexual affairs with another she-goat, she could not tolerate the goat's activities. And yes, as I said, today is a Snan Yatra, is the appearance day of Lord Jagannath, Haribo. That was in the time of Swayambhu Manu. That means 153,400,000 years ago. Lord Jagannath appeared. And then for sake of that, Lord Jagannath's appearance, the bathing ceremony is performed. It means Abhishek. And more about this you will hear from Ramru Prabhu in the Bhaktivedanta school. Hare Krishna. Are there quickly maybe any questions or comments? Okay.
There are 5 kinds of liberation. So Maharaj, Yayati and Devyani received which kind of liberation, if any idea?
I don't know. I don't remember. And I didn't go till the end. We have to see.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Well, yesterday Mukunda Madhav Prabhu was saying that they were focused on Lord Narayan. So hopefully it was one of the 4 auspicious ones. So Sayuja is excluded in that case. So whichever 4, then it's all auspicious. Whichever out of 4. Other 4. Okay, we'll stop here then. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.